have some perspectives and, Mr. Chairman, some guidance on trying to get a document that we can land and get out. Is now an appropriate time to make specific comments on the draft?
I think so. I'll just check with Alex. Are you happy to take comments on the draft at this stage, or do you prefer to talk about just the resolution?
Through the chair, I think if there are no questions, then I think we will take the advice, because we do need to be able to get this feedback so we can finalise any of those documents. But I'm in your hands. Usually questions and then debate and discussion. But
I think now would be.
I've got some suggestions about refinements, and I just want to check with the chair what's the appropriate time to.
I'm thinking now would be, and staffs are happy with that.
The perspective I had on this, and I think Councillor Hodgson beautifully expressed at the joint council meeting the real balance here of competing interests between the safety benefits from speed as compared with the costs and the impacts on a large number of people, whether they're taking their kids to school or whether they're a pizza delivery company or a courier company. And I think the intent behind the council resolutions was to try and get a document that presented some more options. So it might be helpful if I just go through and specifically say, I think on the back page, you have got a title on page 17, have your say on speed limits in our region. I think that's a very appropriate title for the document. I feel the draft title on the front page, let's put safety in the driver's seat, or the original draft that said, let's put speed in its place, had the impact of more of pushing in a particular direction rather than actually going out there. So my first preference is for the document to be titled, have your say on speed limits in our region. Nice and neutral, genuinely going out with consultation. I do feel, and I know there is a debate in councils, why are you getting all of these OAA requests? Why is the community, both in New Zealand and other countries, getting this loss of confidence in institutions like councils and government? And it's because they feel that they vote and it has no impact. Things just carry on with things as they are. And so that's why I think it's really important that the consultation document puts the information out there in as neutral a way as possible and genuinely asks people to express their views. So that's my first concern, is with respect to the title. The second is, I think the paragraph on the bottom of page 10 about the change of government almost invites cynicism. And I am not a cynical politician. I want us to say it the way it is. When it says speed limit policy may change, I'm sorry, the three parties that were elected to government said it will change. And if you wanted some alternative wording, I would just say it the way it is. I would have it, that paragraph, rather than saying there may be a change in policy, it should say, we acknowledge as New Zealanders voted for a change of government and that the three parties negotiating to form a coalition all campaigned on changing the policy of reducing speed limits. National spokesperson Simeon Brown has announced that the speed limit policy regulations will be repealed and replaced. We will need to take into account any changes in government policy before making final decisions at the end of the consultation. That, in my view, is a more statement of fact that has gone on. I think using the word may change is disrespectful of the change of government that has occurred and more accurately says what has occurred.
I'm just thinking that's very wordy. Are you able to provide this to?
Yes, I've written it out. Yeah. Happy to provide it. It is just a factual statement of what's occurred that we will, rather than, I think, saying, well, things might change, what will be extraordinary. Yeah. Effectively, you're saying that these political parties that are negotiating have stated a policy are not going to do what they said. Well, I don't. I have an assumption, and I think it's essential to the trust in the political system that people do what they say, and we should take them at their word.
Yeah, I don't have any problem with that. I just have a little bit of an issue that is very lengthy.
Well, I look at the number of words in the room that's in that part of the paragraph.
And they're similar.
Yeah, it's not a distinctly different number of words. I can go on with other refinements if you wish. Yeah, happy to provide you with copies of that.
Who's going?
And obviously there might be other opinions around the table.
Hang on a minute. I think Alec, you want?
No, through the chair, those words are if once the committee's agreed, and you can hand those through to us and we will make the necessary changes.
I only have 3 points and I've got one to go. I think that it is disingenuous on page 16 of the document to say that the cons of the speed limit changes is, and just watch to simply remove the word slightly. That is under the cons. When you reduce the speed limit from 80 to 60 kilometres per hour, to say that results in slightly increased journey times, is my view is the word slightly is disingenuous. Actually, that is reducing the speed limit from 80 to 60 is a reduction of 25%. I don't think 25% is slight. And I think that's where the document lacks balance. And so my preference would be just to remove on page 16 the reference to slight. Now, they are 3 suggested amendments. I don't want to take away from council staff that you've provided extensive information in the document on the costs. I think that's really good and done exactly what's required. If I look at the amount of change I'm proposing, it's about 10% of your proposed words, so don't take it to heart. It's just, in my view, just refining it and getting it into the shape that I think it's a more neutral document that is going to enable the public to have it. And so there are the 3 changes that I would propose in refining.
Thank you. Emma.
Thank you. Just in response to the second point raised by Ms. Smith, we're quite comfortable with indicating that there is an understanding that may be a change in policy, because we obviously don't have a formed government and we are in the caretaker convention at the moment. So I think it's appropriate to acknowledge that and recognise that. It is, I don't think it's appropriate to reference particular MPs that have been voted in when we don't have any positions confirmed yet. So without that reference, I'm quite comfortable with that change. And secondly, just on the slightly increased journey time, I'd be interested to know the extent of analysis, because what these are the drop to 60 kilometres on narrow winding roads. Generally speaking, that is only a slight change in journey times because vehicles are already travelling at those levels, but I recognise we don't often have the ability to put the vehicle counters that assess current speeds on those parts of the network. So just interested in the extent to which that reflects the actual assessment of those corridors, whether it is, if they were wide open, straight, sealed roads, that's a different matter, but if it's predominantly the narrow, windy roads, then the evidence is that that doesn't make much change to journey time.
Any other questions, comments? So just for the wording, of course, sorry, Celia, I have to remember to look left.
Look, I did actually raise this at the joint committee meeting last week, and I do just want to question why we are putting the information in about costs, implementation costs and productivity costs, because as I think it sends a confused message. This is about safety and we have to pay for safety. So the message that's coming to me from putting this implementation costs and productivity costs in there is, yes, it's about safety, but actually it's going to cost you money. And we think that that's important enough to put in the document. And I think that sends a confused message because everybody knows that changes cost money, but in order to get safety, we have to spend money. So I just think it's a confused message. I'm registering again my disquiet with this. So that's, I'll just leave it at that.
Thank you. Any Councillor Neil Stevens?
Yeah, just
Your O'Neill, Stephen, so.
a couple of comments from me. My view on the speed limit may change, perhaps is likely to, probably will. I don't think we need to necessarily rewrite that whole paragraph, and just acknowledging the kind of the position we are in today, which is still we don't want to do a Muldoon and get too far ahead of ourselves in that space. My main concern is just around the productivity costs section. Read anything on the relationship between transport and productivity and you'll never get a straight answer because it's incredibly complex. And so I'm just, even just the discussion of costs, is productivity costs are quite a specific thing. So I'm just wondering if we drop that back to just productivity impacts perhaps. But I also think you do need to note, and backing up what Emma said, if you look across the speed limit reductions between here and Blenheim over the 110 kilometre stretch adds on average 4 minutes, but with an 80% reduction in DSI, the productivity impacts probably net benefit. So I just think that the language in there, like I'm supportive of having all of that stuff in there. I just think we need to actually make sure we're not overcorrecting the other way, and presenting data that's unbalanced in the opposite direction. It's just about putting it out there that yes, there may be trade-offs. This is a complex environment. The relationship between speed and productivity is complex. We want your thoughts on this, because without having done that work, we can't say with any great certainty. So I think there's just a little bit of finessing to be done in that area. But on the whole, I think you've done a great job to incorporate the concerns that were raised and to just get the document working slightly better.
Any others? Chris, hello. Bill, Mr. Royce.
Yes, through the chair, I guess looking at the change of government, one of the challenges that potentially we as a group have is that the new government may well or has indicated the direction they're likely to go, but they may not have actually changed the law by the time we need to comply with this.
I just think it's really tricky territory when we have officials questioning the integrity of a newly elected government. The government's policy of the 3 coalition partners is to make changes in the first 100 days. Now, the reason in my resolution at the joint council meeting that I want to push it out to the 29th of February for a consultation is to ensure that's within that 100 days. I do not want anything in this document that suggests that elected members are going to do anything less than what they say. Now, if they don't do it, well, then they face the criticism at the time. But I do think that we should act in good faith, be respectful of the decision that was made at the general election, and not preempt what we're doing, but just to openly flag if they do what they said that they would do, the speed management policy will change in the first 100 days of the new government. That's what they've very clearly said, and we just need to be respectful of that. Saying it might is raising a question, well, we don't believe them. Well, I'm sorry. I don't think that's acceptable public policy.
Any other questions, comments? So it appears not. So I guess, Alan, particularly for you as the report writer, round these changes to the consultation document, I don't see any way in the resolution other than minor changes. Do you think we need to approve these changes by resolution, or are you happy to take them on board as the general from yourself, and then I will ask the committee? Just how do you think we should approach this?
So through the chair, the intent of my the third resolution was specifically to deal with minor changes. I'm unsure that these are minor in the case of, apostrophes and comment and what have you. I think ideally we need clear direction. I don't think there's enough on the table for officers to go away and to wordsmith this without then bringing that back. So ideally, and I know I'm probably being a little bit difficult, but I think we need a little bit more guidance in terms of that we can leave here, have some clear guidance and go away and amend these documents, especially. And we're not being disrespectful to just for the record of any incoming government. The yellow words, the words that have been highlighted, we as officers felt was a good balance. However, if this committee feels that that's not the case, then you need to provide us with guidance. And we are happy to take guidance. Maybe a way forward is to use me Nick's words, but not use individuals' names.
I'm happy with that.
Maybe we can read that out again for the benefit of everybody. We can get some guidance. And then we can discuss the word slightly. And then also, I think it is important on the first cover sheet to figure out, we have proposed quite a different change of tack. Let's put safety in the driving seat. And the view is to take that back to speed. Am I correct? And I think we do need guidance on that. I don't think that's open. That shouldn't be open for officers' debate.
So why don't I test the meeting? Might be the easiest way.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Is that my view is: are we going out to the community as advocates for speed limit reductions, or are we going out to the community, provide them with a set of information, and let them make choices? And it is my view that there are different views. And as I said, I actually thought Councillor Hodgson beautifully summed up the dilemma and the different views. And that's why the title that is proposed on page 17, in my view, is the best way to express that. So I'd like to move that the title of the document be, "Have Your Say on Speed Limits in Our Region." That's what we're about doing. We're about going out there and saying, here's an opportunity for you to have your say, and I'd be happy to move that be adopted as the title of the consultation document. And seek a seconder.
Councillor Dowler.
Yeah, just a question, region or regions? There are two regions still.
Oh, look, when you're dealing with a title, my view is to keep it reasonably parochial. I would 100 times a week refer to the Nelson Tasman region. And so, look, if it was a legal document, you would need to say regions. I think in the public's mind, they often refer to Nelson Tasman as a region. So my preference would be to keep it as region, as per. I'm not changing the wording. I'm just lifting the wording from the back page and putting it on the front page because I think it's nice, neutral language for which the public can engage.
So what I think we'll do is we'll work through these as amendments, and then they will become part of the substantive motion.
Sure.
So then that has moved the cover. Is there someone changed to the title? You're having a second. Is there any further discussion around that? Would you just like to read that title out again?
So it's as per page 17 on the back cover, "Have Your Say on Speed Limits in Our Region." So it's basically taking that from the back and putting it on the front.
Does anyone wish to speak for or against that before I put it? So what these will become part of that substantive motion, Councillor O'Neill Stevens, I see you're looking at that. If not, I'll put the resolution. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, resolution is carried. Right, we've got three more.
Yes, and I take on board Emma's comment about removing the name of the individual. I've sent the amendment that way. Can I just have it back again so I can read it out? The revision. Sorry. So it would read: "We acknowledge New Zealand has voted for a change of government, and the three parties negotiating to form a coalition all campaigned on changing the policy of reducing speed limits. They have the national spokesperson, take his name out, has announced that the official regulation we're working under is the speed limit. What's the regulation rule?
The setting speed.
The setting speed limits rule will be repealed and replaced within 100 days. We will need We're just there to statements of fact. And then we're saying we will need to take into account any changes in government policy before making final decisions on these proposals.
Did you get the ability? I'll pass it around and perhaps you'll
I just need to get exactly the correct name for the rule within it.
Yeah. I think this one might be a little more challenging. I'm not sure. We'll see what the opinion around. Yeah. Does anyone, did you want to speak any further to that, or you've covered off?
If you would like me to move that amendment, I'd be happy to do so procedurally if that would help.
Yeah.
My view is this is really critical stuff about trust in democratic institutions. All of you are aware of the level of both cynicism and a reduction in confidence in respect for institutions. And the really important part of that, whether it be council elections or national elections, is that people are, regardless of their view, are respectful that when the public vote for something, that you actually don't pretend and just carry on like nothing has changed. And so the purpose of the amendment is it may become out of date very quickly. I think the councillor just told me that, you know, the government may change, but that would be the absolute honest statement of where things are at around where we are. And that's why I believe it's an appropriate amendment. I say using the word that there may be a change sort of suggests that, well, somehow those that campaigned on things aren't going to do what they said, and I don't like anything that suggests that level. If they don't, they deserve to be appropriately criticised for not doing what they say, but I always take people at good faith that they will do as they said.
Yeah, Councillor Dowler.
Yeah, just the highlighted piece we've got above the blue box, it says we acknowledge the speed limit setting policy, blah, blah, blah. We raised it from Tasman that our communities have been asking for changes for some time, so we are proceeding with the consultation. Now, we will be wanting to reset speed limits. Whether we get kicked away by the government or not, we'll have to make a stand somehow, because it's just gone on far, far too long. Our rural communities are starting to get really sick of it. They don't think they're being listened to. What you said, Nick, is fine. I don't have an actual issue with that, but somewhere we need to somehow try and keep that piece in, indicating that we want to proceed with speed limit changes. I don't know how that can be added in or not, but I'd really, really like to see that there.
Would you second, can I just ask an informal question? Would you second my resolution? I think the sentence, our communities have been asking for changes for some time, so we are proceeding with consultation, is important. It's included. Can I suggest that be the second sentence of the third paragraph? That gives that explanation up front, doesn't take away from the piece at the bottom, but also provides a good continuity. So it would read, Nelson City Council and Tasman District Council are jointly consulting on a draft SPA to help come into force for 2024. Our communities have been asking for changes for some time, so we are proceeding with consultation. In this document, you'll find a variety of options. I think that flows well, but still has the piece on the end. And I think that you're correct that there is a loss of some of the meaning by completely removing that portion. And so I wonder whether my amendment could incorporate those words.
Yeah, what I don't like is kind of words on the move is really challenging.
It is.
I couldn't quite, through the chair, I couldn't quite grab the exact wording of your prior amendment, but I couldn't quite capture the intent. Hopefully we get on this.
I think we've got it, yeah, Bill's nailed it next to me.
And we do have to remember this is just the document for consultation, but and now you've taken the name out. Matt, I thank you.
Apologies, it was I might not quite have got the exact wording right.
No, it's got. I think you've done a good job. I think that is good, but the only bit that I'm sort of adding on it is, and that the words our communities have been asking for changes for some time, so we are proceeding with consultation is retained, and I'll let the wordsmiths of council officers.
For Elaine and Kelsey, that's to go somewhere else.
But I'm happy to leave it to officers that we're signaling we want those words retained and let you work out where you're unsure.
I think we're happy on we understand.
Yep.
It's part of the yellow bit that moves back to the second paragraph.
And the words quote, and I'll read it to you.
Yeah.
our communities have been asking for changes for some time, so we are proceeding with consultation, be included in the appropriate opening paragraph.
Yeah, it doesn't need to be part of it. Yeah, we carry on, Kelsey, is it? Yeah, that's just,
And they included in the, to be included in the opening section rather than paragraph, because I want to give the staff
yeah,
they've got to make it sort of flow.
Yeah.
So that's it.
Yeah.
I'm very happy with that.
right. Any further comments? Comfortable? Everyone appears.
And a minor thing on the front page, 21 needs to be 27th, but that reflects the council the resolution that I have.
Yeah. Wonder why did he come here? Repel was spelled differently. Not being the speller, I need to pick that up. Oh, you are indicating.
I just asked, have we
Deputy Mayor,
have we checked that all of those parties, as part of their policy, have specifically said they want to repeal and replace the setting of speed limits rule? Because if that's not true, it shouldn't be in the
the word that's very helpful, Rohan, is the word signalled.
Have all of them signalled?
Yes, they have. The National Party's policy, as included in my mayor's report last week, was very explicit.
Yeah, I'm wondering New Zealand First and Act, and specifically, is it repeal and replace, or is it change the inputs? Like, this is quite complex legislation, and I also think we don't want to go in and have the other farce of democracy, of misrepresenting the democratically held positions of other elected members.
I'm just trying to be reasonable.
Yeah.
What you could do if you wanted to be absolutely sure, Rohan, is include the exact wording that was in my mayor's report, because then you're quote for quote. The only thing is that makes it very long. I think if you read my mayor's report, which includes the exact quotes of those parties' policy, is fairly represented in that resolution. The alternative is to remove that words and put the exact words that they have used.
Yeah, I've just signaled, I think this is probably more than what's needed in something a slightly more chill along the lines of, we acknowledge that the incoming government intends to change speed setting policy.
Well,
but I also hate more than anything is riding consultation by committee. So I'm in two minds about what to do with my feelings here.
The key sentence is the second.
Yeah.
The first one is, if you can find some wordsmithing that it is fairer. Look, the main reason for not including the exact public statements that they have made is I'm very conscious of the amount of space.
So I think if we were to pass this and someone comes up with some variation, one of the main resolution is that the myself and the deputy chair can approve minor changes to that. So
Can I suggest a way forward? I don't want the consultation document. In the references on page 17, why not put a note? You know how you can put a
extra.
what do you call it when you put a little number that refers to a reference? A reference number?
Yeah.
Yeah, but after the word limits rule, put a little number above it and include in the references a reference to the specific documents that are tabled in my mayor's report. And that includes the exact quote. So if somebody wants to check where that's come from, I don't want us in the consultation document necessarily specifically saying it, but refer to them. Well, why did you come to that conclusion? Well, here's their policies.
Yeah.
I've just and this was the reason that was in the back of my head, and I've forgotten you had the exact wording, and is that actually most of the policy is around the outcomes, not necessarily the mechanisms. And the thing with the setting of speed limit rule is you could easily change what the advice and input is without changing the mechanism present of, which is something that local government had called for a long time. So I do think this one's important to make sure that we're accurately representing what what.
Well,
the
remember,
policy
my
decision
original
is.
wording that I moved specifically referenced the statement from National Spokesperson on Transport and their quote that was in the public arena last week on the front page of the newspaper that said that they would repeal within the first 100 days the speed limit management regulation that we're making reference to. So my first preference, as I indicated, was simply to quote that spokesperson.
Because, just the quote that's in your mayor's report is in our first 100 days, we'll stop Labour's blanket speed limit reductions.
Yes.
Which could honestly refer to quite a, are we talking state highway? Are we talking the actual mechanism? I just want to make sure that we're not getting
Like I say, my first preference would be to use my original wording that I amended, and that was to quote the exact words that Simeon Brown put on the front page of our local newspaper last week with respect to the speed limit regulations. And that is the relevant document because this is what the document's been based on. Don't need to mention by name, but if you want to change that wording there, that would be the alternative.
Councillor, you finished in front of me. Councillor Ellis.
Thank you. Through the chair, I'm not struggling, but I feel like I agree with Rohan about that first sentence feels like it's more of a commentary. I kind of feel uncomfortable about it. How does we acknowledge that the new government has signalled that there may be changes to the speed setting policy, and then we have, however, many of our communities have been asking for changes to speed limits for a number of years. We want to take this opportunity to hear from our communities about speed, and we will need to take into account any change in government policy before finalising the plan. In the words, in our communities have been asking, and stop there. And then that covers all of those bases without that commentary. It just slightly changes the flavour of it and has both sides of that argument in it. Does that make sense?
Anything further? And okay, we'll take your guidance, Richard. Thank you. Oh, hang on.
I just wonder whether you pull it right back and say we acknowledge New Zealand has voted for change of government and the future of the speed limits rule has not yet been formalised.
I'm sorry. I find that offensive. I find that offensive because New Zealanders voted for a change of government. There was a very clear signal that these policies are going to change. And when officials just want to carry on, though nothing has changed, is disrespectful of democracy and the decision that New Zealanders took. Now, you're quite entitled to say that the strict regulation has not changed. I'm sorry. Our government is run by elections, and the clear intent is to change the policy.
Councillor Ellis, I'll ask you to bring your microphone on, please. Then I'll come across. Assuming you've finished, and then come across to Councillor Lewis, Deputy.
Yeah, look, I think we're just really getting into way too much. I do think we need to be careful here, though, at the same time, is that from our perspective, the rule hasn't changed. And probably the most significant piece of the constitutional judgment was around this very issue of an incoming government announcing policy changes but not having yet made them, and the ability to action things before the law is changed. So I do think we need to be clear with what we're working with, which is a set legislation in front of us that is requiring us to do things. And if we want to achieve it in line with what the legislation is in front of us, we need to do this. Whether I think that that's directly relevant to this paragraph, I think at the end of the day, it's a paragraph in a consultation document where most people will probably skip to the ends to give us their thoughts directly. So I wouldn't make too much of a deal of it, but I do think it's important that we are still working with what's in front of us, and we have no ability to change that. But also, as is noted there, this is something that we haven't had elections. We're still all here, and it's our communities that have been asking for change, which is why as councils we are seeking to proceed with this.
So guys, you had a third thing, and I'm just wondering if we should adhere to that. Or is you
More than happy as to how you'd like. I do have one other line of questioning, but I think this issue does need to be resolved one way or the other to be clear to so officials know what they're putting in there. If there's, and I still think the language signalled is very fair when you read the quotes from the three parties. I think the footnote provides the exact clarity and connects it in, and it's not perfect, and but it's as good as. So I'm happy to move the amendment as worded there. Originally I wished if it was only my call, I would include the exact statement from Simeon Brown in the newspaper last week as the national spokesperson, which is the party that won the majority. I've compromised in terms of toning it back in response. I've also compromised in terms of making sure we include the very valid point, and that is communities have been pushing this for some time. So I think that's as good as we're going to get, and would like to have that issue resolved. And so suggest that we just put that and then come to the next issue.
Right, do we have a second? I guess I better second it pro forma then. I'm a little bit like Rohan. And I'm just torn between whether we can get it better by doing some offline adjustments. And so either was
the other alternative is that look, I'm really keen to try and make sure the wording fairly reflects the range of views around the table. But I also share the chair's view that when you're running consultation documents this way, is the move the meeting to allow the chair and the deputy to find some tone wording that reasonably reflects the views with officers to get this bit right. If we adopt this, we still have the resolution that allows the chair and the deputy chair with officials to try and refine it a bit more.
Have you happy with that?
I think with good faith we can take on board the range of comments around the table. And for those that are concerned that I might be a bit stronger advocate, Stuart's a good set of breaks, and I assure you that the wording that we would land with would be to try and take on board some of the fair concerns that have been raised by colleagues like Rohan.
Speaking to the amendment, Councillor Dowler.
Oh, just a comment actually, because I think when we go out, and if we manage to attend at the AMP show, people are just going to be worried about what the speed limit is going to affect, and all that writing in front of it. I would imagine it'll be a 2-second scan.
Correct.
And go to the nitty gritty. So I wouldn't get too hung up over it. We just got to make sure that we're not pulling all over anybody's eyes and we're pretty accurate.
Anything further? If not, I've put the resolution. It's there. You're aware of it. All those in favour will please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Resolution is carried. Thank you.
Can I just ask one line of questioning? You've done a really good job, and I'm one of those that says, yes, safety is important, but you also need to be open about the costs in a consultation document. Staff have done a good job identifying what those costs are. The only question, do we have any clarity, Emma, about what the share, either Emma or our officers, what the share is between the ratepayer and NZTA currently on how those costs would fall between Whakakatahi and council? At the moment, the document is silent on that. I think if I was a member of the public, I'd be interested in that. Do we have any information we could include in the consultation document about how that? I think there is $19 million of cost depending on which options. Is the subsidy, the normal FAR subsidy available? What's the intention, and can we provide some guidance?
It's normal fare.
Say again.
It's normal fare.
Yeah.
Normal fare.
So I think we should ask staff to put something in there, is that under current government policy, the costs would be covered by FAR, with X% falling on the ratepayer and X% being expected from Whakakatahi, albeit this may a change depending on the new government's position. Just something there about, well, we've said there's a cost, where does that cost fall? And I think that is material to our community.
So did you want that to be an amendment as well, or?
Yes, my view would be, well, I'd be interested in an answer from officials as to have I understood that correctly, and if so, we would just be asking for guidance for an appropriate sentence that provides an explanation of the split of what those costs would be between ratepayers and whakatei.
Through the chair, Emma Spate has answered the question, so it is correct. And perhaps we can just say, we can just keep it quite open and just say, and that words relating to subsidy be included in the document, and we can work through the structure of the sentence. Yeah. The financial assistance directly can use those words, Elaine. Thanks.
No, just want a straight sentence from our two lots of officials to make sure that information's in there.
So are we seeing that as an amendment or part of the substandard motion?
Oh, look, to just make it easy, why don't I just move that amendment, that the words be added to relating to the subsidy and the breakdown in cost between the ratepayer and whakatei. I know we're all familiar with FAR and how it works. Actually, for the public, it's all a bit of confusion, and I think the information's better to be in there.
Do we have a second? Deputy Mayor O'Neill, Stephen. Any further discussion? All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against. Resolution is carried. So I think that brings us to the substandard motion. Councillor Deputy Mayor.
I've got one, which is I do think with the sort of productivity cost section where it's not actually referring to productivity costs, it's talking about journey time. I think we should change productivity costs to be journey times. And I would like to move an amendment to such effect.
Can I always looking for compromise? Our main job today is to carry out the instructions from the joint committee and the invitation. The word productivity.
To consider.
Yeah. Always looking for solutions, and I think you make a good point. The specific resolution does use the language productivity. Can I suggest we use the words in the title section on page 11, productivity impacts and journey times?
Yeah, I think my major concern is just reading that, save for maybe the last sentence of the last bullet point, is that there's actually productivity is not discussed. It is just journey time, and so just from an economic perspective, if you're reading that thinking you're going to get information on productivity, you're not. You're getting journey time impact, which obviously then flows through and has impacts on productivity, but those are much more complex and considered. So I just think we need some honing to get it to be a more accurate reflection. What's the information actually being provided as well?
So you want that as a specific amendment rather than minor editing change?
I think it might not be considered minor, but
I'm very determined that the issue of productivity is up front, because if you're a plumbing business out there and you're going to, as some of these options, reduce the speed limits on 80% of the roads in Nelson City from 50 kilometres an hour to 30 kilometres an hour, and you're one of our 30 courier drivers in Nelson, the number of parcels that you are going to be able to deliver is going to have a very real impact on your productivity. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't do it. I'm saying that you should be open about that, and that the issues, productivity is one of the biggest issues for our community, being clearly identified by economic development agencies as one of our challenges. And so don't mind some refinement, but do not support the word productivity being reduced, because it's a very real consideration in the policy.
Yeah, and I'm really supportive of my issue is that productivity in that isn't actually discussed in the wording. So just putting it in the title is kind of to me a misnomer of some of what's actually in there. Is, that's one form of the productivity impacts, but then we'd also, as is sort of touched in there, you start looking at fuel savings, you look at the costs of deaths and serious injuries, you look at the flow-on effects of modal shift and other changes. You then look at actually what is the productivity impact if for 95% of the journey there is no speed limit change because you're operating on arterial routes. it gets complex. And so I think, and that's what I flagged earlier, is that I think just saying productivity costs, there will be impacts, I think inevitably. How we capture those in a way that says, hey, these are happening. What we can give you a bit more certainty on is your journey time impacts. We can outline that relatively clearly, as I think is well done in the document here, but without doing the work, I think just, and I'm still happy to have reference to productivity. I just think we need to be careful to not cross our wires and start presenting journey time as productivity, because that's just not an accurate reflection.
Hang on a minute, Nick. I just want to so that we know where we're going. Are you happy with that as your amendment? You're happy with that as your amendment?
But I'm keen to find it.
Because if it was changed to, agrees that the words productivity costs be changed to journey times, if it said to me, should be amended to productivity impacts and journey times, I'm happy to say it. But I'm not happy to see a special section removing the issue of productivity, because it is.
And my only request in that case would be that we actually have some wording related to productivity in the section.
I'll be more than happy for that.
But I do not want to write that as a committee.
No. Yeah. So have we found something that you're both happy with in this amendment?
Yep. So agree that the word productivity costs be replaced by productivity costs.
Just slowly, just typing. Anyway.
Be amended to productivity impacts and journey times. And that officials draft some appropriate words on productivity. Yep. And that officials draft some appropriate words about productivity impacts. Sorry, Michael.
You're happy with that, Deputy Mayor O'Neill Stevens? Do we have a seconder?
Yes.
By Councillor Fowler's
Got me first.
yeah, got beat you. Move Councillor Deputy Mayor O'Neill Stevens and seconded Councillor Dowler. So any further discussion? Did I see you indicating, Sarah, or was that about something else? Councillor Butler,
No,
sorry.
I was just actually going to support Deputy Mayor Owen, and because I think that the word productivity is would not be understood by a lot of people in our community. It is, you know, it could be seen to be a word of jargon a little bit. So I think including in there the journey times makes it more understandable by a lot in our community.
Thank you. So I'll put that resolution. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. So if there's no further discussion, we'll now move to the substantive resolutions and recommendation 3 on page 4 of the report. I'll get you to bring up, ladies. Yes, that was from 3 to 6, but they're all in passed, other than those that were in the agenda, which include. So we may need to amend 2 to incorporate what's been passed this morning. So we might just need some wheeling around that.
The resolution 2 has got the word revised. We've just revised it some more. So I think the resolution is fine.
So you're happy with that?
Yes.
Yeah. And we're all happy with the minor changes. So would someone like to move that substantive recommendations? You're moving all of those, Councillor Dowler. So move Councillor Dowler. Do we have a seconder? Councillor O'Neill Stevens. Any further discussion? If not, I'll put the resolution. All those in favour will say aye.
Aye.
To the contrary, the recommendation is carried. Resolution is carried. What was next on the run sheet?
Closing.
That's it, closing.
Closing, any, it looks like a huge raise. So we'll just have the,
And apologies, this is a new kind of to me, so I might not nail it. Kia hika te korero, kia waitia, kia mama te manawa o te tangata, kia o ke te ara mo tātou e ora nei, ko rongo ki ronga, kia tina, kuie, tai kia.